Hey, I'm Aubrey. This is the IV Infusion checkoff. And so before we begin, I'm going to check my physician's order. I'm going to gather my equipment and my supplies. Next, I'm going to utilize the 6 rights of medication administration. I'm going to check my IV solution and making sure that the proper solution is added with the prescribed additive. And then I'm going to go ahead and calculate my hourly infusion rate. So with the calculation that we got, it was 1,200 mLs, and it was 15 drops. So it's over 6 hours. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna times 6 times 60 to get 360, and then I'll multiply 1,200 times the 15 drops to get 18,000, and then I'll do 18,000 divided by 360 to get 50 drops per minute. Okay, so now that I have verified my calculation, and so once I do that, I'm gonna go ahead and just make sure throughout this whole time I'm gonna use proper technique and prevent any type of infection using my standard protocols and precautions. So now I'm gonna go ahead and wash my hands. So once I've done that, I'll be able to go ahead and enter the room. Knock, knock, knock. Hey, my name is Aubrey. I'm gonna be your student nurse taking care of you today. Can you tell me your name and date of birth? Perfect. Are you allergic to any medications? No? Okay, great. So the doctor has ordered you to start some IV infusion, so I'm here to set that up for you. It should only take about 10 minutes. And so before we go ahead and begin, I'm gonna go ahead and hook up the IV pole to the IV pump, and I'm gonna plug that into the electrical outlet. Okay, so I've already made sure that my IV pump is connected to the IV pole and it's plugged already into the outlet. So now I can begin. I'm gonna check my 6 medication administration rates, and I'm also gonna check to make sure that the IV solution, if it needs any proper solution added to it, that it does have the prescribed additive. So now I'm gonna go ahead and make sure that I've checked the expiration date on my solution. I'm also checking for any discoloration and if there's any particulate matter in the solution as well before I go ahead and use it. And I would go ahead and put like a tape on it, and I would label it with the start date, or the start time, excuse me, the date, my initials, the rate, the hourly rate of it, and then also an end stop time as well. So once that's all labeled, I'm gonna go ahead and remove my administration set from the package as well. And I'm also gonna label that with the date, the time, and my student initials. If I do need to add like a needle, a blunt needle, or a needleless device, I would also make sure that that would be attached to this administration set tubing. And I'm also gonna make sure that it's clamped. So when I have it like this, I wanna make sure that it's rolled all the way down, which it is. So it's clamped, and now we're good to go. Okay, so I'm gonna set that back down and come back to that later. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and remove the protective covering from the IV solution container port. And so once I do that, I'm gonna also, and now I'm gonna go ahead and remove the protective covering from the spike. I wanna make sure that while I'm doing this, I'm gonna maintain its sterility. And now I can spike it. Okay, so now that it's finished and it's spiked, I'm gonna go ahead and make sure that it's clamped off. Just one more time, which it is. Okay, if I had a glass bottle, I would first go ahead and clean the rubber stopper on the top of the bottle with an alcohol pad, and then I would go ahead and insert the spike through that rubber stopper. So now we can go ahead and hang the bag. Okay. So now with this, I wanna make sure that the drip chamber is filling halfway, which we'll get there. Okay, so that's about halfway. And so now I'm gonna go ahead and prime my tubing. All right, so now I'm gonna go ahead and open the roller clamp back up. As you can see, I'm opening it back up, and I'm allowing the fluids to come out. So while I'm doing this, I'm making sure that I don't have any air bubbles anywhere in my line. So I have some right there. So I'm just gonna flick them with my finger to mobilize them and get them out. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and turn on the IV pump, and I've already loaded the administrating tubing according to my manufacturer's instructions. So I'm gonna go ahead and program the pump for the primary infusion with the prescribed infusion rate, which is the hourly rate, and also the volume to be infused, which is typically the amount of mLs in the bag. So this is a 1,000 ml bag, and I'm gonna go ahead and put on some gloves. So I already applied my gloves, so next I'm gonna go ahead and make sure that I have thoroughly cleaned the injection port. I'm gonna choose the side that's closest to the patient, and I'm gonna use an alcohol prep pad, so I would just thoroughly clean it really, really well. I'm gonna go ahead and assess the patency of the IV line and the site by flushing with a normal saline, and I'm gonna make sure, I'm gonna attach this to make sure it stays like that. While I'm doing this, I'm monitoring for ease administration. I'm making sure that there's no swelling or redness at the site, and I'm making sure that the patient isn't complaining of any discomfort at the site. I won't give the medication, the IV medication, until the patency of the IV site has been verified. So once I do that, that's done. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I want to use the 6 rights of my medication administration, and I want to check my IV solution one more time to make sure that it's the proper solution that's being infused along with any prescribed additives. Okay, so another good skill to know is how to manually set a drip rate in case there's a power outage or you're just not accessible to an automatic pump. So we're going to go ahead and do 50 drops a minute. Okay, so I would use my roller clamp to adjust the speed that is set as your drop. So ours was 50, so I just played with it until I got it to the 50 drops a minute. And you just open and shut it and get it to wherever speed you need it to be. So I have my watch, and so I am going to start now. Okay, so that's 50. And so once I've done that, I'm gonna go ahead and grab my IV administration set, and I'm gonna go ahead and connect this, the set adapter to the IV catheter. Okay. All right, so when I do that, I'm gonna go ahead and connect it, and I've unclamped the tubing. So I'm gonna open up the roller clamp all the way, and I'm gonna go ahead and press the start button on the pump. I also wanna make sure that all the alarms are on and that they're audible to allow me to be able to hear if something goes wrong. And I'm gonna go ahead and make sure that I've checked the pump to make sure that the hourly rate is correct and that the infusion volume is running correctly. And then at the end of my shift, I'm gonna go ahead and make sure, or the time that's specified by your agency, I'm gonna clear the pump of the volume that is to be infused, and I'm gonna record the volume on the INO form. All right, so now I am ready to begin my secondary administration. I'm gonna utilize my 6 rights of medication, and I've checked my IV solution to make sure that it's a proper solution along with any prescribed additives if need be. I'm gonna check my expiration date on my solution as well as anything for discoloration and if there's any particulate matter in the solution as well. I would go ahead and place a time on the solution with the infusion rate, a start time, and end time, my initials, and I'm gonna go ahead and remove my secondary administration rate from the packaging, and I'm going to go ahead and remove it, and I'm also gonna I would label it with the date, the time, and my initials, and I'm going to make sure that it's clamped, which it is. And if I need to attach like a needle, if I need to attach an appropriate device, so like a needle, a blunt needle, or a needleless device to the administration, I would do that now. All right, so now I'm gonna go ahead and remove the protective covering from the IV solution port. So I'm gonna remove the protective covering. And so when I do that, it's really important to maintain its sterility. So now that I have removed it, I'm gonna go ahead and grab the spike with this guy, making sure this is sterile, and I'm gonna go ahead and spike the bag. Okay, so now it's spiked. I'm gonna go ahead, hang the bag, and it's already clamped. We made sure that it's been clamped, so now that's clamped. I've hung it. All right, and so I'm gonna go ahead and compress the drip chamber, and I'm gonna go ahead and fill it about halfway. Okay, perfect. All right, and so next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open this up. I'm gonna open the roller clamp up, and I'm gonna here we go. Got all of the air bubbles out. Now, if there were air bubbles in the line, I would just go ahead and flick it with my fingernail to get them mobilized and get them moving out of the tube. So that's done. Okay, so I've already stopped my primary infusion, and now I'm gonna go ahead and thoroughly cleanse the injection port closest to the primary bag of the infusion with an alcohol prep pad and I'm gonna connect it to the secondary administration set adapter to the primary solution set. So I'm gonna connect the two. Once I've done that, and they're connected. Okay, now I'm gonna go ahead and utilize the 6 rights of medication administration. I'm gonna check to make sure that my IV solution is the proper solution that needs to be hung with the proper, if there is prescribed additives, that they're there as well. And I also wanna check the compatibility of both my primary and secondary bags. And I've hung the primary bag lower than I've hung the secondary, so we wanna make sure that the secondary is higher. And then I'm gonna go ahead and program the pump for the secondary infusion with the prescribed infusion rate, which is the hourly rate, and the volume to be infused, which is typically the amount in your primary IV bag. Says it on the notes. And then I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna unclamp. I'm gonna unclamp my secondary infusion. All right, I've unclamped that one, and with the prescribed infusion rate. And now I'm gonna go ahead and open up the roller clamp all the way, and I'm gonna do it on this one as well. All right, and so now I would go ahead and say this is my start button. I would press start if there had a button on the pump. Also, I want to make sure that all of my alarms are on and they're audible and that I can hear them if I need to. I'm going to make sure that I check my pump and hourly to make sure that the correct volume is to be infusing. And then at the end of my shift or whatever specified time of according to your agency, you want to make sure that you clear the pump of the volume infused and recorded the time and the amount on an I&O sheet as well. And so the last thing I have to do is I'm going to document my procedure. So I'm going to take off my gloves. I'm going to wash my hands. I'm going to label it with the date and the time, my initials, the site location, also the type and the size of the catheter, the solution that I hung and I used, the teaching if I gave any to the patient, as well as the patient's response. And then I'm done. And I also want to thank my patient before I leave the room. Okay, thank you so much. Bye-bye.